would make sense at this juncture to take a moment to talk about Eddard Stark, as he would go on to play such a vital role in what became Robert's Rebellion. Born in 263 AC, Eddard was the second son of Lord Eddard Stark of Winterfell, the Warden of the North. The fact that Eddard was indeed a second son, history mostly neglects to document most of his early childhood before his fostering with Jon Arryn in the Vale in 271 AC at the age of 8, and therein lies part of the issue for Eddard Stark when he suddenly became Lord of Winterfell at his father and brother's murder by King Aerys II Targaryen. He was a second son, so his elder brother Brandon had been raised since childhood in the ways of rule and lordship. He sat at his father's side as any heir would, to ensure that when the time came, they were ready to take on the responsibilities of being lord. Being a second son, Eddard had very little of that same training, but given his success as a lord during the rebellion and the years since, it's very clear that Jon Arryn did enough to mould the young Eddard into a competent ruler. Even so, this rise to lordship was very sudden, not just because he was a second son, but given the fact that Eddard Stark was still a relatively young man who could have lived for decades more. Eddard's sudden rise was not just unexpected for Eddard himself, but the Kingdom of the North as a whole. While the North was mostly remained loyal to House Stark since they consolidated their power in the North during the Age of the First Men, given the uncertain political situation in the South and the idea of open rebellion, there was some fear Eddard may not have the full support of some of his more troublesome northern lords, which is exactly why Lord Eddard had to return to his seat in person to consolidate his own power and call his own banners, rather than remaining in the south and having one of his senior lords, or his younger brother Benjen, do so on his behalf. As discussed prior, getting Eddard back to the north was more of a tricky matter than it might have first appeared, with Gulltown at the time under the control of House Grafton, who had sided with King Aerys II, and it being the only true port in the Vale meant that Eddard would have to find another way to gain safe passage back to Winterfell. With a small escort of guards, Eddard crossed the perilous Mountains of the Moon, hoping to find passage across the Bight in the Fingers. The mountains, even at the best of times in the height of summer, were a bleak and inhospitable place, with even some of the mountain tops still possessing snow caps. While of course there is a high road that passes through the mountains via the Bloody Gate and the Eyrie, the areas it passes are inhabited by the feared mountain clans, whom reject the authority of House Arryn, and have likewise been a thorn in the side of the Lords of the Vale for centuries. The likes of the Burned Men and the Painted Dogs, who would often target small and even larger groups of travellers along the high road, and of course, there was always the danger of falling into a rocky crevasse, hit by a falling boulder, or being eaten by a shadow cat. Thus, the journey for Eddard would be a perilous one. We cannot say for sure if Eddard and his guard took the high road, or if they took some sort of smaller mountain pass, but we know that he did reach the Fingers. The speed at which the journey was undertaken does suggest the latter. When he reached the Fingers after many days of hard travel, Eddard hired a local fisherman, promising him a bag of silver to take him across the Bight to White Harbour, the only true city in the north, and the seat of one of House Stark's most loyal bannermen, House Manderley. But the weather in the Bight is unpredictable at the best of times, and shortly after setting off, Eddard's small fishing boat was caught in a savage storm, the likes that had not been seen in a generation. The fisherman was lost at sea, drowned, but Eddard and the fisherman's daughter survived the ordeal and found safety and shelter on the Three Sisters, a small set of islands in the centre of the Bight where they would wait for calmer weather. This nameless fisherman's daughter would become the subject of much speculation and rumour in the years since the rebellion, with some in the north and further afield, especially in the Vale, speculating that this fisherman's daughter could have been the mother to Eddard Stark's bastard son. However, in truth, there is very little proof to support this suggestion, and it is likely an issue lost to the pages of time. But this fisherman's daughter will not be the only woman linked to the rumours of the bastard's parentage, with several more being suspected, some even highborn. Regardless, Eddard made his way to Sisterton, to the seat of House Borrell. While House Borrell was sworn to House Sunderland, who controlled the Three Sisters, In turn, House Sunderland were bannermen to House Arryn, and thus sworn to Jon Arryn. But given the divisive nature of the rebellion, Eddard was unsure of the kind of reception he would receive. After all, some of Jon Arryn's bannermen on the mainland had remained loyal to King Aerys II. It is said that House Borrell's maester urged Lord Borrell to deliver Eddard's head to King Aerys II Targaryen. Not only would this prove his loyalty to the king, he too would likely be handsomely rewarded come the end of the rebellion. However, by this time, news of Gulltown's capture by Jon Arryn and Robert Baratheon had reached the sisters, and thus Jon Arryn's consolidation of his control of the Vale, giving Lord Borrell pause for thought. At this time, most lords would have been very unsure who would prevail in the conflict. Many had tried to overthrow the might of House Targaryen over the centuries. All had failed in a bloody end. Lord Borrell would hedge his bet somewhat. He allowed Eddard to leave for White Harbour without any hindrance, telling him to remain silent about his short stay in Sisterton in case the rebellion failed. Eddard Stark, known now for being a man of honour, seems to have kept Lord Borrell's request, with the tales of Eddard's brief stay at the Three Sisters only coming to light in the years after the rebels had won the war. Eddard was now free to sail to White Harbour. It is believed this mysterious fisherman's daughter remained behind, and as the unsubstantiated rumours claim, Eddard left her with a bag of silver and a bastard in her belly. Once Eddard reached the safety of White Harbour, he would take a boat up the White Knife River, then overland to Winterfell, where he could call his banners and prepare for war and the long, arduous journey south. Given the sheer size of the north, the gathering of men and resources takes much longer than the southern kingdoms. The Dance of the Dragons, and the many months it took Cregan Stark to gather and march his famous winter wolves south, is another keen example of this. Thus, in the weeks before Eddard could start south to join up with Robert Baratheon and Jon Arryn, fighting in earnest had already begun, and would only get bloodier when the savage Northmen entered the fray.